the June installment of Deep Dive with Altum. This is our monthly webinar series where we just take a moment to have lunch together and talk about some hot button topics. My name is Elizabeth Richards and I am the CEO of Altum Healthcare Solution. And today I'm super excited to introduce you guys to Ashley Hill. Ashley is not only an unbelievable revenue cycle leader, but one of my good friends. Ashley has a finance degree from the University of Tennessee, and then she came to her senses and got a master's degree from the University of Georgia. And she's been an inspiring revenue cycle leader for 15 years now. Ashley's been with Wellstar since 2019, where she is currently the AVP of Revenue Cycle for the Physicians Group. And so just really excited to have Ashley. Oh, and I also have to tell you that Ashley is the president-elect of the Georgia chapter of HFMA, which everyone who knows me knows is near and dear to my heart. And next May, she will be installed as our 70th president and our first Black female. So we're super excited about that. And I'm just really excited for you guys to hear from Ashley today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ashley, and we can get started.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me? Perfect. So thank you guys for this time. I am honored and pleased to be asked to share. I will say this is perfect timing for me because my leadership journey has been forever changing, evolving, insightful, and truly a deep dive into myself, my knowledge, those around me, and what I can do to support. So really excited to share. My hope is that I share something that resonates with you, something that you can take away. But also, I hope that I can share something that you guys can provide feedback to because I'm always looking to changing. So thank you, Liz, for changing to the next slide. So this slide, I just want to say, really represents just where I began and where I'm working towards. So my leadership journey, and I think, Liz, if you can go back one more slide. It's okay.
Okay.
My leadership journey and growth came by way of reflection, determination to course correct, and realization that the best leaders take the opportunity to reflect on their previous actions, apologize, and course correct to create a safe space for their team and colleagues. And I will say that this did not come easily. Many of us who are given the opportunity to be a leader, we have a vision of what others lead by, of the leaders that have led us that we like or do not like, traits and trends we can take away from them, but it's all a work in progress to our authenticity. What I learned in one person that I don't know but hope to know one day that I read a lot of is Brene Brown. And one thing that she said was, we desperately need more leaders who are committed to courageous, wholehearted leadership and who are self-aware enough to lead from the hearts rather than unevolved leaders who lead from hurt or fear. And so this is huge for me. From that first slide with the self-reflection, Liz, if you can go back one more, because I think that is one of the traits, and you guys will hear, that makes me who I am, helps to mold me as a good leader. But not only self-reflection, it's what you do to actually make the change. So you guys will hear today me talk about just different people who have impacted my life, my peers, my colleagues, my team, and how I got to where I am today in my journey. So for the next slide, I want to talk about me versus reality. So many times, I'm sure you have this plan, you get this new job, and you decide, hey, this is how I want to show up, versus what your team's perception of you really is. For me, that was wanting to show up confident, intelligent, strong, inspiring, encouraging, and impactful. What I found was I was showing up unapproachable, hard to engage, firm, knowledgeable, but not sharing that knowledge, assertive, but maybe not in the most positive ways, not as empathetic as I thought I was, and terrible at stress management. So what I say here is sometimes we have this idea of how we present, but the reality of how we present is really a true reflection of what our team shares about us and around us. For me, my first official leadership position was when I was expected to be the director of revenue cycle at Piedmont Health System. I had previously worked in consulting, and instead of driving change through influence, I was driving change through being an individual contributor in consulting. In consulting, you know your goal is you're going to be there for 6 to 9 months, and your ultimate goal is to meet the bottom line of that health system to help them get to the next place they want to be financially, to allow them to have a really good bottom line income-based statement, and or help them prepare for a change, transition, or transformation. In consulting, everyone shows up with the same understanding. Find one person at that health system to help lead change management for their health system, and you use them to impact that change. There's no buying into the organization. There's no buying into how people feel. There's no buying into understanding that the team members working the work show up because maybe they have something going on at home, maybe because they enjoy being with their team members, but also that they're looking for a mentor or a coach. It's different when you're consulting. And when I showed up at Piedmont, I forgot to turn that hat off. I had experienced many different leadership styles, some that were direct, some that were rude, some that were hands-off, unsupportive, some that I would call the double-sided coin. They looked the same, but their actions, reactions, and support were very inconsistent. Along that, I also met some great coaches, some that would help me identify where I had opportunity, some that would coach me to be better, some that would coach me to strengthen the areas that I was weak at. But the value that I found that was most important is the ones that left the most impactful impression for me were the ones that taught me that the work will get done, but it doesn't get done if you can't impact change and support the team members doing it. As a leader, you can't do all the work by yourself, and you're not expected to, but you're expected to empower, create a place for innovative ideas, support the team members who are there to support you. So from there, I decided I wanted to figure out what I wanted to mimic, what traits I wanted to mimic. And that's where the me versus reality showed up. What I realized is, why couldn't I create my own leadership style? Why did I even have to mimic anybody? Why didn't I take the bad leadership styles and remind myself that those were truly not authentic to me? So during my initial years at Piedmont, there was a me versus reality that showed up probably for the first 1 or 2 years. And then Piedmont decided, okay, as leaders, we wanted to invest in the leadership team we had. And they had this great person by the name of Susan Perry, who led an adaptive leadership course. And Susan has become a longtime friend. I actually still reach out to her when I need something. She was there to really mentor leaders as a whole. Really, instead of just saying, you're bad here, you do better here, she allowed us to really look at our emotional intelligence and really hone in on where we could be better, what we could nurture, how we could be our authentic self, how we could show up as our best self, and how we could better support and trust our team. The key from her was to be comfortable with our authentic traits, our skills, our style, be confident, be positive, but most important, think about the people and how we can best support and influence them throughout the day. So that was where I was at, me versus my reality in my first leadership position at Piedmont. And I really struggled of, how do I really impact change? It wasn't about telling people what to do. It wasn't about micromanaging. It was about identifying and nurturing their skills, identifying and nurturing where their strengths were, and helping empower them so that we could all meet the goal together. Because I learned it was better to celebrate together than to celebrate alone. Next slide. So here's just a few facts and stats that I think really kind of molded me. So I am a reader. I read all types of articles. I use that to really better myself. And I find that as a value add because it allows you to get a perspective that really helps mold and gives you insight into how to be a better person each day. So this article and this stat came from the McKinsey consulting firm. And so what it says is within the workforce, while there is a large percentage of women working, the representation of women in leadership compared to entry level is smaller in percentage compared to our male colleagues. Understanding these factors early in my career and acknowledging that I too preferred working with and maybe even for a male leader helped me to further analyze how I could be a part of the change that makes working with women better or even just as valuable as working with men. So in my career, I worked for and with a varied multitude of men or women. And what I found is the pressures of life that affected women showed up more at work than maybe with the men leaders that I worked with or for. I found that I had more support from the men leaders that I worked with or for. They were more encouraging. They were more supportive of me growing. And what that helped me realize is there was something unique about that. Whether they found it they were more empathetic to us as women, I can't answer that. Whether they were more understanding and compassionate, couldn't answer that. But there was something of value that I found that they were more confident, they were more supportive. And I actually had the opportunity and still have the opportunity to work for great male leaders that allow me to be strong where I am, but then also to nurture and change my leadership style to support my team. While there are many reasons and takeaways from this grid, I think what I use from this grid and these stats is, for me, it's to be a part of the increase in women leaders that people would like to work for. Become the leaders that one feel influenced by and encouraged by. And to begin that with me, being confident, being understanding, being open, being flexible, being empathetic, and learning that it's less about leading by demanding, but coaching and truly being a servant leader. I find that is very difficult for leaders. Sometimes they forget that you're not in the position just because of what you know. It's to help mold and meet the goal and drive change. But that comes from the value you have and the respect you have for your team and the people you work with and the people you work around and the patience you have as well. And so maybe that's what I found value in with the male leaders I worked for. I will say I worked for some phenomenal women leaders. But I think what we find is many times there's a race or contest internally between us that if we're not honest, we're not really able to support each other. And so it was for me to change what that looked like, change my experience and be the change and be different for someone else, for my team, and for my peers. Next slide. So I began to do some work and learn about myself. So what I learned in my adaptive leadership class with Susan Perry was where I had strengths and where I had some strengths that were so strong that the perception was negative. So yes, I was emotionally self-aware. I was independent in my thinking, realistic. I did a good job building interpersonal relationships on the surface. I had a balance of stress tolerance, but I struggled with vulnerability. I had what appeared to be empathetic, but it wasn't consistent in the empathy. And I was a bit flexible. And so these are the things, honestly, I still monitor, I still try to dive into, and I still check myself honestly to make sure I'm exhibiting what needs to be exhibited, but I'm doing it authentically. It's one thing that stood out to me from my team who did a 360 when I was in this adaptive leadership class. They shared their understandings of how I reflected these different traits. And a couple of things stood out to me. From a vulnerability perspective, They felt that I shared high level about who I was, but I was unable to share and relate to the things that were going on with him. So more of a robotic person, which was definitely unfamiliar with me, because instead I viewed that as guarding just what was going on at home, not making them obvious to how I was struggling, or maybe the knowledge I didn't have, but to present strong. And what I realized is they wanted to see the human in me. They wanted me to be empathetic. They wanted me to share my experiences or what was going on at home with my friends and my families and places I traveled, and how I love dogs, schnauzers to be exact. The places me and my husband go, and they wanted to hear that. And what it really was saying is they couldn't connect. They knew that I showed up and I was going to help them meet the goals. They knew that I was aware that we were either on the right track or not. They knew that I was realistic about how we were going to get there. But where they found that I was missing is they didn't feel the authenticity of me, and I wasn't human enough for them to connect. And a lot of that said to me that I wasn't diving deep into myself. So all of these, while they scored high on my emotional intelligence for being a good leader, there was a disconnect in what they were perceived as and how they showed up for my team. And so I used that to say, okay, these are what I was going to focus on. And how was I going to get better? And how was I going to listen more? And so at that point, I had to decide I needed to make a change, because what was showing up each day, what I thought was showing up each day, what I portrayed each day was not the sense and feeling that my team was getting. And I had to figure out how to impact them successfully, how to build strong team members, how to coach strong team members, and how to help them be successful in where they wanted to go. So that means I needed to make a change. Next slide. So this is where the work begins. Through the understanding of emotional intelligence perceptions from my team, my peers, and myself, I was able to truly immerse myself in true adaptive leadership and build strategies that allowed me to be an impactful leader. I was able to really look at, what does it mean to navigate the business environment? What did it mean to lead with empathy? What does it mean to learn through self-correction? And how fast does that correction really need to happen? And what did it mean to have creating a win-win solution? I recognized that leadership was not about how much knowledge I had, and if I was the person in the room with all the answers, it didn't matter. Instead, it was creating an environment for my team and those around me to use their knowledge to help make business decisions, to bring new ideas, and to lead various change efforts that impacted our team. It was not that they didn't want to hear from me my opinion, but they also wanted room to share theirs and their idea to see if we really could do something different to really reach the same goal. It was about me being empathetic and aware of my team members' needs, how they like to be communicated to. Maybe they didn't like to receive emails from me late at night, even though that's when I was working. Did it create pressure for them when they showed up first thing in the morning and a bunch of delayed emails responses showed up to them? What did that make them feel like? How they wanted to be recognized. For me, I'm not a person that looks for recognition. I really like to stay behind the scenes, but some of my teams do want to be recognized, and my team members. And so I wanted to make sure I understood how they wanted to be recognized, how I could show up for them and support them, when they needed me to listen and provide direction versus when they just needed a sounding board. Sometimes we're listening to respond versus listening just to hear them out as they navigate their own thoughts and their own solution. And sometimes because we as leaders speak up, interrupt, and force our own ideas, we don't give them the room and latitude to do so. It was me remembering to reflect and take the time to pause and identify how I could be better and do better for my team. Identify how I could show up as my best self for them every day. How I could ensure that my day-to-day stressors did not show up negatively on them, but instead how I created a calm, supportive work environment for them. Where I had the opportunity was to admit that I didn't know everything, to apologize if I missed a miscommunication, to realize that there was something that I may have messed up on the day before, but how was I able to course correct? and to be honest about that, being open, being vulnerable, being consistent, and making it a space where they felt safe. For me, identifying that compromising and finding a solution was more valuable than doing it my way just because that's what I was familiar with. Understanding that our final outcome is the ultimate goal, and that it wasn't always about how we got there, but that we got there together. And for that, that's where I started to realize that all the things I had thought I was showing up as and all the things that I had learned, I really needed to make a change. And from there, I decided that I needed to find my own craft, which, as you'll see on the next slide, is a little gimmicky, but it's really what I've used for my past time in my career. So, to the help of Susan Perry in adaptive leadership, and I at this point I just have to call her my friend because she is a resource and value add. If you ever find her on LinkedIn, she's an amazing person, an amazing spirit, and an amazing coach, both personally and professionally. So she helped me recognize that I was able to become confident in myself and my leadership style, while also being willing to make actionable changes that were authentic and a true representation of my best self. This allowed me to show up for my team, my colleagues, my leaders, while continuing to impact their lives in a positive way. Through the building of trust and valuable open relationships truly became my craft. So for me, craft represents compassionate, respectful, authentic and aware, fair, and trusting. With this craft, I also realized that I needed a team of sounding board people for myself. And so that made it a point to find a mentor, and that was done authentically, someone that I can confide in, someone that understood what I was doing. Interestingly enough, I was able to find a group of people who some work for me today and some used to work for me, who are able to speak up to me and share with me where I'm wrong. I actually have a director who works for me who, when we have our one-on-ones today, she's able to tell me, yes, I didn't agree with that, but this is how I think we should have done it. And that relationship has been the most profound one for me, because we worked somewhere together previously, and now we work together at Wellstar, and it has been impactful because she's able to tell me where we have missed opportunities, but where I can support her, she can support me, and it's truly value add. In that team, I also empowered getting a therapist, because at Wellstar, they support you being the best leader. And being the best leader means showing up as your best self. You can't show up as a partial self no matter what's going on. So it's navigating the root cause of those issues. And so having my therapist, who I think is kind of now like my life coach, she's allowed me to navigate how I really respond to my team, how I show up for my team. Are things as big of a deal as I think they are? Or is it easy just to wait for a result? Is it easy to allow room and space for them to make mistakes? It is. Because what I've learned from my team and for myself is, when I started creating this space of safeness for them, when I started to show up compassionate, respectful, authentic, fair, and really started to trust them, I realized that the respect became mutual. And everything that they were doing their best for me. They were doing their best whether I was in the room, whether I was not in the room, whether I was out of office. They were going to make sure we're going to show up for Ashley just like she shows up for us. And so I think that's huge as you think about leadership. It's not really about what they do and what your team does and your peers do when you're there. It's how they show up for you when you're not, and how you guys support each other, which is truly a remarkable strength, which is truly a value add thing that you want. And it truly, really represents what being a leader is. It's how we can all show up for each other when we need to cover for each other, but also how we can show up for each other to still meet the same goal, whether or not we have all the pieces, whether or not we have all the knowledge, but just in the sense that we respect each other enough and hold each other to a high regard that we're willing to do our best for each other. Next slide. So compassionate for me is caring about the person's why, their determination, what impacts them, their passion, what motivates them, why they show up each day. Some of us show up because we like being in healthcare. There are some people in healthcare who show up because that's just where they fell in their career. Some show up because they care about the patient, and some show up because they just like the problem solve. But in that, it was me understanding why they do the work each day. During COVID, I took some time out with each of my team members, and it was very interesting to call each one of, I believe I had 152 team members at the time, to call and just have short discussions. Some were scared to talk to me, which shocked me because I just wanted to know about them. I learned about team members who had birds at home. I learned about team members who were feeling some type of way about being at home with COVID because they missed seeing people on camera. I learned about adventures that team members had. I even became close with a team member whose daughter was trying out for a show in Nashville and wanted to be on American Idol. It was learning and understanding that each one of the team members, that even though we show up to work every day, we have a passion outside of that that drives what we're doing. And maybe work is a means to an end to afford the things that we want to have and do and experience. But it was me understanding that they had a purpose, and that purpose either extended beyond the work we did or extended within the work we did. And it was for me to support that purpose, to remember, to ask them about what was going on, to really effectively get to know them and their family members, which added value. Because I can't tell you enough, when I see my team members now, that's a little bit over 200 plus, remembering their family members, asking them updates, which I do during the week and on the weekends if something comes to mind. It really shows how we connect. And it really shows that I am showing up for them. It's not something I'm pretending to do, because it's something that I really care about. I want their work life and home lives to be just as positive so that we can focus when we are at work. And so it's important for me to make sure that I am caring and I understand what they're going through. And when times are hard and times are tough, that I can be empathetic and sympathetic to that around them and understand how that impacts their work. For me, the next slide is respectful. It was intentionally listening, understanding that everyone is different. We don't think the same and or have the same assumptions, but we can find a common ground to respect our differences to meet a common goal. This comes by way of my tone, my attentiveness, listening. So I had the opportunity to work for my previous leader, who is a really good friend as well. And what I remember one day is he came in, and he's so amazing. And we were working through AR with our team, and we were pretty much picking up the pieces where another leader had previously been. And we were trying to really drive change. And I knew what was authentic to me was, hey, you just tell people this is what we need to do when we move through it. But for some reason, I knew that wasn't authentic to my boss. And he even attempted to try it. And we still chuckle about it today because it wasn't authentic to him. And what I realized about him is he was more about inspiring people, encouraging people, and telling them a story to drive change, because that was authentic to him. And what I noticed is others found respect in that, because that was his level of vulnerability, of sharing about his family, sharing about his friends, what he did, his dogs, his pups, all the things that was authentic to him and allowed them to respect him just as much as I did. And so through that, I realized that the respect is a key part. It's about listening. It's about observing. It's about mutually understanding that everyone comes from a different place, but we all have a common goal, and how we get there and respecting each other's way to get there was most important. Next slide. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being my Vanna White today, for sure. So authentic and aware, being yourself. I've said this a lot of times, I think, on this call. This is the most valuable, as I think, Because as you remember, I said what I thought I was showing up as versus what I really showed up as were not my true self. Authenticity is not about showing up as a version of yourself that is unpleasing to be around or work with. Instead, it's recognizing that your authentic self is not always accepted by others, and it is up to you to find your strengths and work through those opportunities to exhibit naturally and best illustrate yourself. Authenticity doesn't mean people have to take you as you are. Authenticity means, how do you meet people at the table? Showing up with your best attributes, acknowledging where you have weaknesses, and doing the work to be self aware to make those changes. People just want you to be honest, to be vulnerable, to care. And that's what authenticity is. And that's what it was for me. It wasn't that I couldn't show up and admit that I had a bad day. I could. They were okay with that. It wasn't that I couldn't show up and say, you know what, I don't know the answer to this. Let's all put our heads together in this. It was the familiarity that they knew I would show up and be honest about what I said. I would be honest in who I presented. And I wasn't presenting a self of me, a portion of me that was one way at work versus in the public. I currently get to see some of my team members in public. We all live in probably the same area. And so it is important for me to make sure that how I show up at work is how they would see me in public and representing myself. Because I do find myself that it's important to represent myself as a great leader of Wellstar, also a great leader in the public, and for the other organizations such as HFMA that I support, and that I happen to be a board member of. So it was making sure that I was comfortable in myself, but also making sure that I was even more comfortable with understanding where I needed improvement, and more aware that that improvement came by change and being better for my team members. Fair. So this one was hard for me. As a leader and team member, you learn you will not always check the boxes for everyone. Everyone won't like you. Everyone does not want to be your friend. Everyone doesn't have buy-in to where you're going and how we're going to get there. But for me, it was being consistent, setting standards if they needed to be set, making sure that what I did and what I said I would do, I actually followed up and did and said I would do. Making sure I was consistent, making sure I was following through, and making sure I was answering questions if asked. This kind of rings a bell that fair's not always about everyone getting the same thing. It's all just about making sure that everyone gets what they need from you to be successful. And for me, that was making sure that whatever that my team and my team needs from me today, that I could pour into them, I could support them, and I could get them in a timely manner for them to be successful. It does look different for everyone because everyone wants something different. But also fair was making sure I was being fair to myself, giving myself grace when I messed up, giving myself peace when I may have needed it and I may have not said the right thing. But being fair to myself that I was allowed to make mistakes and that it's best to just learn from them. And that I wasn't going to always get it right as a leader. And I'm a plan to work through, and I'm continuously working and under construction. But I was going to do my best to be honorable and for my actions to follow the words that I said. And as long as I continue to stick to that, I have found success in doing what I say that I'm going to do. And if I can't do it, speaking up when I can't and sharing the why, because that's what your team wants to know. They want to know, are you going to back them up? Are you going to do what you said you're going to do? Or are you just saying it to get me off of the phone? Are you just saying it to move on to the next meeting? Are you just saying it because you don't have time? It's for me making sure I'm following up with their ask. I'm getting back to them. I'm answering their questions. I'm actually following through and being fair for the time that they've spent on something, as well as the time that it matters to them for me to get them right, the answer back. And then the next slide. So trusting, I will say, this is your willingness to trust others, your team, peers, colleagues, I truly believe it says a lot about a leader who can provide a focus and goal for the team and trust the team to produce a valuable outcome, empowering them to produce new ideas, new solutions to the problem, and providing the space for innovation, giving them the room to illustrate their knowledge and trusting that they do not need you micromanaging their every step. Trusting while being this last portion of my craft that I continuously work on is truly the most important when I say that. Creating an environment where your team trusts you to give them the space to be successful allows you to truly see where they show up for you and respect you. Your team and peers then support you when you aren't around, which is huge. They want to do their best for you because they know you're going to show up for them. It's funny when I meet and have different one-on-ones with some of my team members, and I've actually learned this from my boss today. It's, what else can I do for you to help you? What am I not doing for you that I can help you in? And what I find is I've been fortunate enough that my leaders have trusted me to execute on the items that they provided me. And for that, it's important for me to show up for them. It's important for me to make sure that they don't have to interject, that I can get them the answer in a timely manner and or before. It's important that they know if I'm representing our organization in a space that they can't be at, that the words or the comments that I'm sharing, we equally share those items and understanding. And that's what you want from your team, is you want them to trust you just as much as you trust them. And I will tell you, the one thing I've learned in coaching, in my therapy, and just working with my mentor is trusting really allows you to have a breath of fresh air because it lowers the stress, because you know you have team members, leaders, those around you who are always looking out for you and supporting you. And so that's been the most value add to me as I continue to work on my strengths, as I continue to try to be a impactful leader, and as I continue to show up for my team. So like I said, I'm continuing the work. This is my team. They're amazing. And so I'm proud to say that I work for them. And it is because of them that my craft gets better and better each day. But I am continuing to work. I am reflecting and taking actionable steps to always be better and be my best self. And so I just encourage you as leaders to continue to do the same, continue to invest in yourself, and to continue to get you a team not only that supports you, that hears you and is your sounding board, but is also willing to speak up when things aren't right, to share, to encourage, and for you all to support each other. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I was like furiously taking notes because I was gonna like try to somehow put it all together into some bow, but I couldn't because there was just so many great like pieces of wisdom and so many great like nuggets in there. And I just really appreciate you taking time today to talk to everybody and to give us such great insight on leadership. You're a phenomenal leader, and I love watching you succeed. Everybody, our next deep dive with Altum will be July 19th, so mark your calendar. Thank you again, Ashley, and I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a wonderful weekend.